The Hlophe family in kwaCutshwayo in Marianhill in KwaZulu-Natal have lost 4 family members. 4 of their neighbours are also missing after last week's devastating floods in the area. The neighbours took shelter with the Hlophes when their home collapsed. Yesterday, the family found 1 body. The missing are mostly children. The family is now desperately appealing for help to search for their loved ones. SABC reporter Chriselda Lewis gives us an update there now live. Chriselda, it's great to have you on the agenda. What's the latest with the search for the loved ones?
Well, Mxolisi, what we understand currently is that there are still 7 members of the Hlophe family that are still missing. Just before we came to air, rescue teams have been deployed to this area to try and search for the remaining Hlophe members, family members who are still missing at this stage. As you correctly point out, one of the Hlophe family members, an elderly mother of this household, she was found and buried on Wednesday, but the family is really at this particular time very concerned about the 7 other members of their family that are still missing. And while the Hlophe family is grieving, just right next door you have 4 family members of their neighbours that are also still missing at this particular time. This will really give you a sense, Mxolisi, of what is taking place here. Take a look right on the top there. That is where this mudslide had taken place due to the heavy rains, and it basically fallen right on top of this house. You could really see here the devastation. The house itself is still completely buried under this rubble. This family is really appealing for assistance on what it should do next. But I must tell you that the rescue teams have been here. They've actually just moved a little bit down towards the river from where I am. We struggled to get to this area, Mxolisi. We had to be detoured from one area where the bridge leading to KwaNdengezi, where we are, has completely collapsed. And I'm not sure if you're able to see those rescue workers at this time. We're not trying to move around too much at this stage, Mxolisi, because the area that we're broadcasting from, there are high mountains around this area. So it's exceedingly difficult for us to be able to get a signal to bring you this story. Also, you would see the lines have collapsed here. The electrical lines have collapsed. So we've also really been struggling to try and get a connection here. I'm going to speak to, in the next few moments, Sis Nhlanhla Hlophe, who is one of the family members who's desperately waiting for 7 of her family members to be found. She joins me now. Sis Nhlanhla, siyabonga kakhulu mama ukuthi ukhulume nathi. Siyabona nje ukuthi nisahlele einhlungwini nokuthi mhlambi ithemba libe khona ukuthi abantu bakwaHlophe batholakale. Mama.
Yebo, ngisanethemba ukuthi bazotholakala izingane lezi ezilahlekile ngoba khona nezincane kakhulu. Khona no 1 years, no 3 years, no 6 years, no 7 years, no 10 years, no 5 years. No gogo lo no 62 years ongatholakali. Kodwa nje sanalithemba futhi siyafisa ukuthi kube khona usizo soluthola ukuthi sikwazi sifihla imizimba yabo nabo balalo ngokuthuna.
Konke lokhu sisinenhlanhla kubuhlungu ngoba kule veki nje esikuyo ngolesithathu benike namfihlo ma
simfihlile ngolesithathu ngoba watholakala emfuleni nalezansi. Yena umuntu osakwazi ukutholakala, abanye abatholakali. Usizo nje silifuna sikutholakala, abanye nalomuzi longekho osambelile asinalutho usha amapasa wekho. So ilokho nje.
Kulaba abasakhangelwa lana sis ubuthe abantwana abantu abadala babili kunjalo
abantu abadala oyedwa lo wale ekhaya ongatholakali, kodwa ingane lezi zo6 izona ezisabhekwa ke nje ezisafuneka isikhathaze ngingazo. Isifisa ukuthi kutholakale imizimba yazo ngoba liphelile manje 2 weeks akubonakali lutho akwenzeki lutho.
Ngibona kunabantu be-rescue la sisiwami bafike nini bona?
Bafika ngicabanga bekoshaya u10 befika. Bafike koshaya u10. Njengoba bebheka nje bangahlala nesikhathi eside base bahamba ke.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu sisine nokuthi usilinde nje kancane. Njengoba besithi bese sifuna ukukhuluma nawe. Sinethemba lokuthi bazawutholakala ngoba siyabona nokuthi abantu basasebenza lana. Bayazama ngendlela yonke nje. Siyabonga kakhulu sis, siyabonga. Sinenhlanhla, you would be able to tell here Mxolisi how very difficult it is. It's 2 weeks now. 2 weeks that 7 members now of the Hlophe family are still missing, and it is 1 adult and 6 children. So you can only but imagine the devastation, and you'd be able to see it's extremely difficult. We had to cross a river in order to get here. I was a little bit concerned for my colleague who's obviously carrying out. Just take a look there towards that area. That is where you have the rescue teams towards this area here. We'll try not to move too much, Mxolisi, because it's extremely difficult. We're trying to get some of these live electrical wires as well, because it's exceedingly difficult to try and broadcast from here, because you also have a situation where there's some live wire that is also here. That's exactly where we had to walk through, which will give you an indication of, imagine how filled up it gets here when it rains, and hence you had such a collapse of that mudslide from there, which is completely bearing this household. Some of the other rescue workers are still at the bottom of the river trying to find if they'll be able to find any of those that are still missing at this particular stage. If we take a look towards this direction where Usisi Snentlantla is walking, it will certainly be able to tell you how difficult it is to traverse this area, where having to walk just right above the house where her family members had disappeared from. And here where we are, the family is just right on top of the house structures that are still standing. You'd be able to see that family's just been sitting and waiting there. If you could only but imagine the agony of the past 2 weeks now, waiting for news on your loved ones. And many of those families that we have spoken to over the past couple of days indicating that for them it is important, no matter the circumstances, for them to be able to bury their loved ones. 2 weeks now, but she says they remain hopeful. There's been a lot of sense of hope in these areas that have been affected, where residents or communities have indicated that they, at this particular stage, are not going to give up hope. They're hoping that these rescue teams, you'd recall there'd been a lot of criticism in the beginning about the response to this disaster. These rescue teams are certainly going to be extremely stretched. We know that there are a number of them that have been taken to various areas to continue the search for those that are still missing. We don't have an official figure for you of how many people are still missing, but for the Hlophes here, they want the 7 members of their family to be found, no matter what the circumstances. And of course, 6 of those being very young children. And this is where it had all taken place, right from on top there. You are not able to see this house at all. That is right here. If you're able to look just right on the top, that is where it had caved into. If you just take a closer look, you'll see what looks to be the structure of a house. And it really paints a devastating picture of what has happened here. And not too far from where I am here at the moment as well, just right next door, is where another family is still waiting for the news. Still waiting for news on 4 other members of the family. So in this community, just right next to each other, you have a total of 11 people that are missing at this stage. We were hoping to speak to someone from the rescue and recovery team, but we're just going to allow them to do their work at this particular time, because certainly the sense here at the moment this morning is that this community, like many others, of course, is in grief, and they're hoping that the rescue teams would be able to give them some kind of finality with regard to their loved ones and where they could possibly be found here. There are also fears at this particular point, Mxolisi, when we woke up this morning, we'd been a bit concerned because there were droplets of rain that had started. Just taking a look at the weather conditions as well in this area, there were expectations that it would rain in the eThekwini area this morning and also into tomorrow. So there's massive concern from community members here that should there be any more rain, it will contribute towards the devastation that we are seeing here in these parts. So we're going to remain kwaNdengezi for a couple of more hours and stay with that rescue team. But there's certainly hopes by the Hlophe family that 7 of their missing loved ones at this stage will be found, including amongst those missing very young children.
That's SABC News reporter there joining us from kwaNdengezi in KZN, talking to us about that devastation that was caused by the floods. Thank you ever so much for your courageous reporting indeed.